Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about scaling your startup across borders, a closer look at building your local entity and remote team. This event is brought to you in partnership with Deel. So before we start, let's just go over a few house rules. There you go. So first, we invite you to join the discussion. Just type in your thoughts and comments in the chat widget. Second, the floor is always open for your questions. Our panelists will be answering the questions on the later half of the webinar. So please do type them in the Q&A widget. For those of you watching it via live stream on Facebook, you can ask your questions on the comment box and our team will try to get them to our panelists. Third, this webinar is recorded. We will be posting it on our online channels, and we will also be sending all attendees a link to it after. Okay. All right. So for a quick poll, we'd like to kind of get to know where you're at in terms of scaling. So here you go. So there's a question on your screen. If you could kindly answer it, we're just going to give it a few seconds. Right. Okay. Okay, cool. We do have another question. The next question would be, sorry, I'm having a bit of a tech issue. Let me just launch the poll in a bit, maybe after the panelists. So let's not delay this. All right, so after this one, I am going now to turn over the floor to our moderator, Madhurima Bhattacharya.
All right. Hi, everyone. So glad that you could join us today. I am Madhurima. I am a senior manager with Bain across San Francisco and Singapore offices. My specific areas of focus are tech and private equity growth. And so far in my career, I've enjoyed the flexibility of being able to work across 4 continents, and hence this topic today is of special interest to me. But let me get right to it and introduce to you the panelists that you came to hear today. Starting with Abhinav. Hi. Abhinav is the head of expansion in APAC for Deel. Deel is a startup that helps companies that are looking to hire remote globally. It helps them manage with international payroll, benefits, taxes, and compliance. And as of last month, is a newly crowned unicorn startup. Congratulations to them. Previously, Abhinav has founded an enterprise healthcare platform, Our Healthmate, with clients like Airbus, Colgate, Sony. He graduated from National University of Singapore and loves tech startups in Southeast Asia. No wonder he's here. In his free time, he likes to bike, run, swim, and cook. Welcome, Abhinav. So glad you can join us today.
Thank you.
Let me also introduce to you the second panelist, Earl. Hi, Earl. Earl is currently the co-founder of Plentina, which is an AI and fintech startup that helps retailers in emerging markets offer their customers an ability to pay with credit without even owning a credit card. That's quite exciting. Earl has previously co-founded QBO, which is the National Innovation Center of the Philippines, the Idea Space Foundation, which is the leading incubator and accelerator based in Manila. And he also brings experience driving digital transformation and innovation at Charles Schwab, Bridgewater, Cisco, VMware, etc. So he's definitely got the wealth of experience here. Outside of that, Earl holds a degree in engineering from Boston University and Cornell and an MBA from Stanford. He's a husband, a father of 2 boys, loves watching sports, especially basketball, we hear.
Yeah, it's the playoffs now, so I'm definitely excited. And thanks for that.
Of course. And the final cool point here is for his contributions to the Philippine innovation ecosystem, he was awarded by the President of Philippines as one of 10 outstanding young women and men in the country. So really privileged to have you join us, Earl. Welcome to both the panelists. And I think for us to get started, maybe we just start with hearing a little bit more from both of you. Just hearing more about your company, what you're doing now, and what your journey so far has been. Abhinav, do you want to get us started?
For sure. I was born in India and I moved to Singapore in 2001. I did my junior college here. I did my university before I worked for two banks, Merrill Lynch and Citi. Took a plunge, decided to start working for a social networking platform in 2010 in Singapore itself. Went on to travel after that to various countries around the world and started my own healthcare company, which was into the enterprise healthcare space. Worked in it for 8 years, and we had employees in 12 different countries, but we had incorporation only in 3 countries. So I know the pain and issues which comes with having a distributed team, and that's what got me into Deel last year when I was having discussions with Alex and Shuo, the founders of Deel, that how I have personally faced this pain point and how Asia and Southeast Asia will be the next growing market. And the opportunity which is coming with the distributed team is something as the next challenge which I want to take. And yeah, that's what I ended up doing. Packing my bags within 15 days, moving back to Singapore, 2 weeks of quarantine, and starting Deel here in Asia Pacific. Other than that, a bit of crazy stuff about me. I randomly decided to join AIDS Life Cycle, cycle from San Francisco to LA over 7 days, around 900 kilometers. And I actually gained weight in those 7 days.
Thanks for sharing that, Abhinav. I'm sure not a lot of people would say they biked for 9 days and gained weight. Maybe that's something we learn from you later. Thank you. Oh, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious about where did you stop over, right? Like maybe there's a lot of good food in the middle, right? So definitely exciting. But at least for me, I grew up in Manila most of my life. I went to the University of the Philippines for a couple of years before I moved to the US to take up aerospace engineering. So my dream actually was to become an astronaut when I was young. That didn't happen, but I actually went close. I worked on drones, satellites, rockets, all these things after I graduated and kind of right before business school. And I got into Stanford Business School kind of accidentally. So I was one of the first admits never to take the GMAT, which is kind of funny. Another trivia probably. And during Stanford, that kind of opened up my eyes on kind of innovation, business, venture capital. At least in the Philippines during the time, VC, which is a nascent industry. I think Southeast Asia in general too. So I realized that with a stroke of genius, pen and paper, and maybe some hard work and luck, you can potentially do something right and then build a company. So end up going to the internal venture team of Cisco, ran innovation globally, 100 countries for Cisco. And it's kind of why I'm also interested with this topic because I definitely had team members, people working for me in many different continents, right? So very intriguing. And then I ended up coming back to the Philippines, building out a couple of accelerators and also head of corp dev for the largest telco, which is PLDT and Smart. And when I was in PLDT Smart, I was also thinking about from Southeast Asia, how can we then broaden and build up a larger portfolio of at least footprint, right? So I opened up the reverse. So I actually opened up a San Francisco office of the private equity firm that I work with that owned the telco. So and then the past 4 years before Plentina was in the tech side of Wall Street as a hedge fund investment house. And I really had this notion of, if in the US, maybe in Singapore, right? Like, credit card penetration is high, thus credit score, credit bureau penetration is high, then it's easy to make credit decisions and thus unlock financial services. But when I looked around my home country, which is the Philippines, and other parts of Southeast Asia, I realized that, most countries credit card penetration is still below 10%, and if lucky, if their credit bureau is quite mature. So we decided to kind of use data and strategic partnerships to hopefully unlock credit for the hundreds of millions of people in Southeast Asia. So thus I'm virtually back. I'm actually calling now from the New York area, but after the pandemic, I intend to kind of be back home quite frequently in the Philippines and hopefully other parts of Southeast Asia as well. So.
Thanks, Earl. And I can tell to the attendees that we have today, like Earl is definitely very rooted and connected to the Southeast Asian market, because otherwise he would not be taking this call at 1 a.m. his time. Really appreciate it. Earl, before we get into others, like the prepared questions that we had, there's one question for you already, which is, what is your favorite team in the NBA? So let's wrap that up.
Yeah, I'm pretty biased actually. So my brother is the director of rehab for the New York Knicks. So yeah, he's that's another thing. Actually, my mentor was my brother, and he kind of told me to push the boundaries. So he's the first Filipino that is in the medical staff. So before he was in Major League Baseball, now he's in the New York Knicks, and the Knicks made it to the playoffs in like forever, right? So I think they're number 4 now in the East Coast. So 8 years in the running. But I also like, because I was in the Bay Area, so I like the Golden State Warriors kind of just by de facto as well. So I have the Warriors, the Knicks, and I was in Dallas with the Mavericks. So those are 3 my favorite teams. So
you hedged your answer there, but we'll take it. Awesome. So given our the group that we have today, and this is all, both of your companies and your experiences have been deeply rooted in Southeast Asia. I guess the opening question to both of you would be, what do you see? What's your view of the upcoming opportunity in Southeast Asia, whether that's in the next 2, 5, 10 years? What do you see as the pockets of opportunity, and what do you see as the biggest barriers?
I can start with this one first, right? Southeast Asia has always provided a great opportunity to people. And I think there has been some tech barriers or fintech barriers, which has always happened. And like, it's a population of 650 million people. If you look at my previous company or what Earl is doing right now in Philippines, we do see that the innovation is coming. The people do not have enough penetration when it comes to fintech or when it comes to health or when it comes to benefits. So there is a huge opportunity which is available there. Now with Deel, we have also seen that shift also happening. Around 30 to 40% of the people who are getting hired from clients overseas are now sitting in Southeast Asia. And this has not just happened because they suddenly found these talent. The compliance, the payroll systems have been significant barriers for them to find these opportunities for the talent which was existing over there. Then the Southeast Asia is divided into multiple countries, multiple laws, languages, and different people have different appetite to risk. So those have played as a key barrier, but with Deel that has been significantly reduced. I was recently reading one of the article which PayPal published a couple of years back, which talked about that Southeast Asia, the developers, the community provides so much opportunity to or so much talent to overseas pool, but the problem is 55% of them don't get paid or get paid on time. And there we have seen some significant changes where the relationship between the client and the contractor is becoming like a vendor to a client relationship versus feeling a part of the team. And Earl and I, we were discussing over the weekend about this, that how a US company or a European company in the past has considered that, oh, we are outsourcing our business to Asia to reduce cost. And the same feeling comes to person who is working there is, yeah, I'm an outsourced person who is a cost center. But with Deel, we are seeing that thing is not happening. So the opportunities are becoming more. The key barriers which were there that, oh, I'm going to have a distributed team, the compliance and the payroll are getting reduced now. A lot of work still needs to be done. And that I think everyone is focusing on that front.
Yep. And I think from my side, right, I started Idea Space in 2012, kind of at the initial stages where Block 71 was just a building where I guess it's pretty sparse during the time, right? And now obviously it kind of extended, and each country has its own ecosystem. So the opportunity really of Southeast Asia was there all along. It's just that I think how it developed is that there's kind of pockets, right? Let's say Indonesia, right? Like I think most of the unicorns in Southeast Asia have a huge presence in Indonesia, and it's also not because the different opportunities of entrepreneurs. I think it's just because funding got focused on Indonesia, right? But I think now there's a lot of questions, right, from investors of where is the alpha, like where is the opportunity? Is it in Indonesia? Is it Indonesia plus, let's say, other parts of Southeast Asia, such as Singapore? Is it the Philippines? Is it Vietnam? And I think what we've seen in the ones that have this mega valuation in Southeast Asia is it's Indonesia plus, or at least it's multiple countries. So think about Grab, where they IPO'd, but they started off in Malaysia and Singapore and Philippines and Vietnam and others. So I think the key of Southeast Asia is a lot of our politicians always say like we're an ASEAN, right? But when we're in Southeast Asia, we don't really think that I'm in the Philippines, like it's easily flowing to like Vietnam, or I can easily go to Singapore, easily go to Indonesia. I think the opportunity for us is how can we galvanize together as kind of one ecosystem, and then really build truly like unicorns where we are in multi countries at the same time. And that's why Deal was very intriguing kind of for me, because now I can think, how can it then expand to another country? Like, let's say Plentina, which is in fintech, we can go, let's say, to another country, understand the regulation, but then how do I think about hiring the best people? And now if I can be free of not actually thinking of all these other kind of headaches of actually hiring someone and getting the best person, regardless where they are, then that gives up, at least my talent pool becomes higher versus others, right? And vice versa. So I think that's really the opportunity with Southeast Asia. It's just this free flowing of talent, free flowing of ideas, and hopefully free flowing of capital as we grow as a broader ecosystem, right? So super excited. I think the next 5 to 10 years is another golden age of Southeast Asia, and thank you to the previous, unicorns that have IPO'd now. I think we've now proven that we can IPO and build mega businesses from our own home turf.
Yeah, totally hear you both. And thanks for that. Definitely big opportunity, and hopefully things are exciting and we hear big capital, big companies around in the region. I did pick up on something you said, Earl, which is like, but there's still headaches that people need to deal with, or like some of the challenges and barriers. So if I may like follow up on that, especially asking you first, like what
Sure.
do you believe is the most significant barrier for those who are looking to, especially, key part of this growth is going to require getting top talent and like global talent. What do you see as the biggest barrier towards
Yeah,
that?
of course. Yeah, I mean, so just to give some context, right? So Plentina were incorporated and headquartered in the US, but then our first market and home market is the Philippines, right? So when we were just literally a germ of an idea, we just had this whole strategy. It's like, how do we build the center of gravity in Southeast Asia, particularly starting in the Philippines? And we were always worried, right? Like, there's exactly what Abhinav was saying, like, should we incorporate what if what to think about the taxes or the benefits, right? Like when is it the right time to actually incorporate versus figure out how to pay people in PayPal, right? Like all these things are all like kind of mental barriers, right? Because at least as a company, especially if you're a funded company, you want everything to be clean, you want everything to be formal, and at the same time you want your employees to feel that they're part of this larger company and not exactly what they're just outsourced and kind of contractors, right? I think the key really there is how do you then build culture, how do you build loyalty, and how do you make sure that people have can participate with your growth regardless of where they are. I think is always an issue, right? So for me that was a mental hurdle in the beginning, so we had to like look at many different schemes, employer of record, right? Like kind of companies, when is the right time for us to kind of transfer people to our local subsidiary. And now we're thinking about like other markets, when is the right time, should we incorporate? And incorporation also has a lot of overhead, right? Like, I mean, it's not just, let's say I'm going to pay my annual fee. Like in the Philippines, like there's, quarterly reporting. Our law firm, right, that we have to have there is like kind of should be the top law firms who don't miss out on compliance, right? Like there is also a cost to maintaining an entity regardless of where you are. So is it worth it, right? If you go to a certain country. So at least those are the things that we kept on thinking about. But for us, obviously, we decided that, how do we, double down in the Philippines. We have a regulatory license there, and now we have, I think, 6 people there, and we plan to grow another 15 people over the next 3 months in the Philippines after we raised our seed round a couple of weeks ago, right? So
That's exciting. Thanks for sharing, Earl. I think helpful to hear from firsthand, right? Some of the barriers and challenges that you've faced. Would also be awesome to have you weigh in, Abhinav, given the deal solution, this is the primary area that you're targeting. What are the
Yeah.
pain points that you hear?
So I'll come to the deal solution, but I think what Earl talked about was more from a client perspective or a company perspective, that what are the problem and challenges that comes in. But we also need to start looking from a point of view of a person who is going to work or who is going to be the part of this distributed team. That if you just think about Southeast Asia or Asia in general, we do have a significant higher percentage of dependence on every earning member. And that sometimes also plays a very crucial role in when I will be getting paid, how much I'm going to get paid, what are the benefits which are being given to me. Any delay in the payment means that the school fees is not being paid or the medical bills are not being met. And so while a contractor or a person who is going to work is worried about the compliance side, but that is only a 20% of it, maybe 80% of it is on the payroll side. While when the company chooses that what are the barriers, they choose 80%, which is on the compliance side, and 20% is on the payment side. And that's where, of course, Deal does, and I can freely keep advertising Deal on that front, that Deal manages both the sides really well. And that we can see, right? We have 2,400 companies who are using us from various parts of the world. The biggest thing is, do we understand that what is the global talent needs? Are we going to bring in more diversity? We are bringing in more distributed teams. That raises two biggest challenge, which are on the compliance and payroll side, 80-20 division, both on the person who is hiring or the person who is getting hired, and how we actually resolve that in the most simplest form, right? So of course, we have the legal side of it, like when should I incorporate? Do I understand the local incorporation laws? What are the compliances? What are the tax laws about it? What are the local labor laws around it? I need a local director to incorporate a company. What should be the shareholding around it? How should the license fees be managed? Once you have gotten rid of all these, then you go on to the non-legal side of it, that what benefits should I be giving, how to run my payroll, how to file the taxes, how to manage the compliance, what are the HR laws. Think this way, right? In my previous company, I think the last 2 years I spent just doing paperwork, and these for me was a significant barrier to entry in expanding faster.
Got it. No, that totally resonates. And it's interesting to get the perspective, not just to see the juxtaposition of how you would view this as a company, but on the other hand, as a contractor, as a talent that's looking to engage remotely. Still taking the perspective of a company, I think one of the key topics we wanted to touch upon is how does a company think about scaling, or how does a company think about where it taps talent pool from? So what factors should a company consider when you're trying to make a decision to hire your first remote talent?
Yeah, I think for one thing I've learned, I guess, as starting companies and funding companies is that, wherever you can get talent, you try to figure out how to attract and then retain them, right? And I think people say that in just general terms, but practically, like, that is the lifeblood of your company, right? So, but then you have to think, if you find the talent, then what do you do? How do you make sure that they are, I think Abhinav kind of mentioned that. I didn't even think about this. It's like, most people are worried if they're going to get paid on time, right? But so for you as a founder, right, as an entrepreneur, I think these are the things that should be the least of the worry of your talent pool, right? I think the biggest for your talent pool is to be sure that they can focus 100% to build product, right, to scale your business, whatnot, right? And maybe the question also there is, when is the right time for you to, let's say, have a local entity versus, let's say, kind of sending things kind of, at least for us, maybe for us, through other means, is it PayPal, is it others, right? Like, is it kind of figuring out an employer record? I think really the question is, why do you need a legal entity? And for me, there's only two reasons. One is you're getting revenue in country, or you're basically paying people in country, right? Especially in a larger scale, maybe 5 people or more. So I think those are at least some heuristics that I put in my mind is, why do I then have to have a local entity and also manage the headaches, right? Legal compliance, headaches for me to have someone there, because there is a big reason for me to make sure that they have to maintain it, right? But at least the lifeblood of it is always customers or employees, right? And talent specifically, right? Like the talent that you want to attract, retain, and hopefully grow inside of your company. So that's how I think about it. Again, my magic number maybe is like 5, and or obviously if you have a major partner customer in the market that they need a local entity, then it makes sense to incorporate there, right? So, but if not, then it's going to be, I don't know, if you're going to incorporate in every country, you might have a talent pool in. That's just going to be literally, I think exactly I would have mentioned, right? Like probably half, not more, of your time as a founder will be paperwork and legal proceedings. So I think that's not also efficient use of time, right? So
Yeah.
No,
Abhinav, what would you add in?
for me, I would just focus on when you should make your first hire rather than talking about the remote hire. Pandemic has clearly shown that teams are getting more and more distributed. Teams are becoming more and more remote. And I haven't met any member of the Deel team yet, by the way. We are 150 people in 36 different countries approximately, and I still haven't met them. And I'm very well integrated with the culture and with the people who are there. And I had a great onboarding session with the team as well. So the idea just comes in when you should be hiring this. We should stop talking about who should be my first remote hire. It should be talent is everywhere. Who is the best person who should be able to do the work which we have, right? And the reason I'm talking about this is we have created these artificial boundaries, which are about compliance and payroll and currency, etc. These can be easily broken. And these can be easily broken and can be simplified as well with a product like Deel, which is there. But also first in your head, you should be very clear about that. Are you ready to take that jump? I believe in growth is defined from the team which you're developing or which you're building. And whenever you're ready, just go for it and hire a first person, whether it's a remote, distributed team, someone sitting with you, doesn't matter.
Got it. That's interesting. And how do you specifically, if we go, so you have hired, that's a view of when do you choose to hire someone remote or just hire someone, like you would say. How would you think about the next step of like, when do you think should I set up the local entity, or should we continue to find alternative ways of engaging talent?
I can actually go first on this one. Let's take an example, right? You have 2 founders who are working, you start working from home, and then you like, okay, I have now a couple of more people, let's move to a co-working space. You find a co-working space which is very close by, and then you start working from this co-working space and grow your team. At certain point of time, you decide, okay, this is good time for me to jump and have my own office. Having your own office, bring in these small issues like, oh, the Wi-Fi is not working, the printer setup is not there, my office is not clean, who is going to pick up the cups, security, who is going to pay the utility bills. And the same thing which comes in like when you should be incorporating in a new country also is the same part of it, right? If you just ask me the numbers, what I have seen from the client side is around 20 to 30 people on average is a good time when you start incorporating in a new country. But I have seen people having 100 plus employees in another country, but they're still not incorporating. Uh, and the reason for this is when you are ready to go more deep into thinking about the costs like HR, accounting, admin, when they start making sense for you. If you have just one employee in a country, you hire someone, you incorporate a company, you still have to manage the payroll, accounting, taxes, compliances, uh, withholding, etc. Is that the right time? For some countries, it might make sense. For some businesses, it might make sense. But for most of the company, the number generally I have seen is between 20 to 30.
Got it. That's interesting. So your magic number is closer to 20 to 30, while Earl was suggesting 5.
Yep.
And that just, I think that just goes to show it's all different. They based on the specific, the kind of business you're running, the
Yeah.
kind of talent pool you're tapping into, and the location.
No, exactly right. Previously, like in Philippines, we had 7 or 8 employees, but we did not incorporate any entity in the Philippines because the amount of time I would have invested in understanding the local labor laws, how I'm going to transfer the IP, how I'm going to uh, find the local director to manage all those things for me. Yes, there was a small significant cost which I would have saved, but the headache, which is the most important part, would have would have continued to be there. So yeah.
That makes sense. And building on this headache theme again, so what are the we talked about at what point do you decide to open your local entity? What are the key drawbacks that one needs to be aware? And these can be both legal and non-legal considerations, right? When you're thinking of opening a new entity in a new market.
Yeah, I think the practical side is, you want to build kind of affiliation and a global culture, right? I think that's like first and foremost as, a startup, as a founder, as a company. You want to be sure that, say, if you have someone in a different part, for example, in the Philippines, even for us, right? Like we were born digital, kind of born during COVID. So literally, I haven't even met physically a lot of my teammates.
That seems
But
to be a
even
theme here.
but even within the Philippines, right? So I mean, the Philippines is thousands of islands, right? Like we have team members in 5 or 6 different locations, right? Like virtually within the Philippines, not even just in Manila. So that's something to think about. Where how is it that even in your many different places, kind of dispersed, how do you then build out that kind of cadence, that culture, and also that affiliation to the company that you're all building together, right? I think that's first and foremost. And then the next one really is then how do you make sure that you know you build the right kind of environment, including as well this notion of making sure that there's the employees are not thinking of are we going to get paid on time or others, right? Like benefits, right? I mean, for example, in the Philippines, right, when we were entering there, there is kind of government mandated benefits, right, like healthcare and the social security and whatnot, right? And some of our employees ask that very specifically, right? Like, am I going to get the standard government benefits as like if I was not, let's say, an employee or not an employee, right? So we want to be sure that that mental hurdle of our employees and team members are not there, right? And that they can focus obviously in product and being good team members and culture and all that. And the one thing that we also were thinking about is, how do we have like this Silicon Valley minded company where, at some point we potentially will give equity to majority of our employees, regardless of where they are. And that's also like a mental hurdle that we think about, how will that transcend, different, regions, different geographies is something that we keep on considering as well in our mind. So yeah, so all of these factors, at least as a founder, we keep on thinking of and making sure that we just build a strong team, a strong culture, and access talent wherever they are. So.
Sure. And to that, like, setting up a local entity or not is just an aspect of solving that broader target you're saying. Abhinav, what would you add on about like specific drawbacks to opening your own entity?
Yeah, I think, see, my experience comes from talking to multiple people in this market, right? Because most of them are deal customers. They're coming to us, they're bringing us hundreds of contractors or hundred of employees, and they are still not thinking of incorporating. Or when they are ready to incorporate in the new company, they talk to us because now they have to onboard these people into their own company. Legal side, of course, is the most trickiest part, right? Because think about a company which has, like, say, even 100 employees. They're not going to have a legal team of their own. This is all being outsourced, and now you are trying to incorporate in a new country. You have to find a lawyer who understands the local incorporation laws. First they need to understand, and then they need to explain it to you. You are getting a second-hand knowledge or information about it. Then you again think about compliance, tax laws, local labor laws, withholding, and now you make a error over there. There are huge fines which are being done by the government on you. So yeah, of course, the legal side is something which you need to consider, and there are all these things which are available. But on the non-legal side, I totally agree with Earl, which is on the culture side. What's the culture which you're trying to build, right? And have one-on-one chat with the person you're looking to hire. Talk to them that how they want to be part of your business. Boundaries are getting broken. Your main thing is that how you want to make sure that this person is really at peace of mind. And again, this comes with the cost that you have to start understanding the regional benefits. You have to start understanding the payroll, the taxes, the compliance. You have a couple of employees in a country. You don't want them to worry about spending again 50-60% of their time on managing these admin issues, right? And this also changes, like, whether you want to bring in the non-compete, your IPs, how the license transfer is happening, how they're allowed to use that. So it brings in these significant complexities both on the legal and non-legal side when you're opening the new entity, but always depends upon your relationship between you and the person you're hiring. And there are always solutions available to make sure that that culture continues, that relationship continues.
Got it. Thank you. I want to make a quick note to thanks for those who have been sending in questions as well as the discussion on the chat. Definitely keep that going. And some of the questions that are coming in, I'll continue to feed to our panelists as we go through this, or if not now, then towards the end of the conversation. So please keep that going. On to the next question for you guys. So now, how should startup think about, as they're thinking about recruiting talent, how should they think about hiring talent as a contractor or a full-time employee? How should they think about these options? What are the considerations here?
So I think last year it was in the news a lot about Uber and Lyft in California and also in UK about misclassification of the drivers, right? And I think one of them, I think Uber was fined more than $100 million, or maybe more than that, for having that misclassification. And if you remember, during the voting time, it was something which California had to vote about it as well, right? So the idea is not just, oh, I can hire anyone as a contractor, or I can hire anyone as a full-time employee. It depends upon what will be the main job scope of this person. Is the person part of the core business, bringing in revenue to the business? What kind of IP this person is generating? That is one part, right? Then the next part is what benefits you want to give to this person. How do you want to structure your payroll? Third part it comes to is in which country you are looking to hire. Every country has a different law, different complexity relating to hiring as an employee or hiring as a contractor. There is not a right answer to that, that in every country, contractor is the easiest way to hire or employees is the easiest way to hire. It depends upon company to company, job scopes, etc. So idea is always have a very transparent discussion with the person you're looking to hire. That's number one. Number two, have a significant discussion with your lawyer, because if you reach a kind of a decision by talking to the person you're looking to hire and you still make a mistake on the misclassification, it's the company which suffers. right? When the company suffers, there's a loss of reputation, there are financial penalties, there are also jail terms which could be coming in. So these are the certain certain factors which people need to consider. At Deal, again, saying this,
That got very serious very quickly.
we 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 do both the things significantly well, right? And we are and you are managing everyone from a single dashboard to us through for both the sides, but ensure that you have a very transparent discussion with the person you're looking to hire, because it's the talent which defines your team. It's the talent which defines the culture of your company, and wherever the person feels most comfortable with, go with that part.
Yeah, but I think practical wise, I think it's it's hard, right? Like I think contractor versus employee. In fact, when you enter a lot of Silicon Valley companies like Facebook or Cisco or Google, like or sometimes even it's a 1-to-1 ratio or even 1-to-2 ratio, right? Like one full time to like two contractors. And the key really is, how do you even delineate one after another? And I think as a startup, right? I think you just have to think because again, it's a term wise. Also, a term uh, relates also to certain rights and benefits, right? Like for example, in the Philippines, if you are a full time employee of someone, then some labor law then automatically applies, right? Contractor maybe not. So I think that's something, and also the expectation. I think it's also not just from the law side, but also from the employee side, right? Like some folks really feel that I need to be like a full-time employee, like what's my classification. And some folks, they're not necessarily as it's not as important for them, because it's also cultural, right? Like sometimes identity, right? Like if you say that are you really part of this company or you're not really part of this company? And for a lot of people, right, like their identity also relates to like, am I full-time status in a certain company or not? So those are like some cultural factors that you also have to think about, when you say hire someone, because not everybody wants to be a contractor. And thus sometimes also not everybody wants to be a full-time employee because they want maybe just the mental freedom to have that flexibility. So I think those are things that at least what I would consider when you would then say, should I hire a contractor or not? But in all practical purposes, right, like, there is a legal definition of a full-time employee. So that's something that some folks need to at least think about very clearly and consciously, right? Yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. And we had someone pose a question on like, how do you
sure.
think if you use a third party, like a third party company that supplies manpower, how does that at all weigh in on how you think about the person you're hiring, whether that's employee or contractor?
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is that you're maybe going through an agency or maybe an area where it could be like literally the employer of record, but then literally they work 100% to you. So I've done many different of these configurations. I work with an agency, the 100% of their let's say designer engineer is dedicated to me. I've done employer of record where they just hired and then literally it's just the paperwork, and then literally they report to me everything day to day. There's not even any layer from their side. So all these different configurations are there. Um, and I think for me practically, right, like it's like what is the outcome that you need, and can you get that outcome with the least amount of stress for you as a founder, right? So yes, that's the thing. So the only thing sometimes with agencies is how do you get at least actually a velocity of ideas, velocity of uh configurations, like how do you make sure that they have that alignment. I've
Yeah,
worked sometimes with agencies before where I get scared because maybe every change I do, there's a change request, and that really is like stressed me out, right?
yeah,
Extra fees, etc. So you just want to be sure you're super transparent on like what the arrangements are if there's a third party in the middle, because if
sure.
not, things could go expensive really quickly, right?
Yeah, I will share my experience is in the previous startup, me and my co-founder were developers and we were backend developers. And I think We focus just on, we are going to develop the best application in the world, which is super secure, super awesome, and everyone is just going to come and use it. And that's what we did, but no one came to our website because it looked like Outlook of 2003. And we went with the agency at that point of time to improve the UI UX for the business, because we wanted to launch something within 2 sprints or four weeks. And that played a very crucial role for us because we were heavily underfunded. We had to improve this thing. Once we knew that, oh, this is the product we want to develop, we started moving more towards the vision and the product side of it. And we learned the real nitty-gritty of how our customers are behaving on a platform. We started having those people as a full-time employee, or having significantly working with just the individual, whether they're coming from an agency or they are my own employee. The idea just became that now we want someone who could be 100% dedicated to our business. So just see at what stage you are, what kind of work you need, how much time is going to require, but also see that how much cash flow you have. That's the most important part for your business.
Makes sense. Thank you. Well, let's look at some of the free, question lists that we have been receiving. And just a note to the others, we have a little more time on the call. Please do send any other questions you want the panelists to speak to. But the one that I see here is specific question, I guess, for both of you. What tools or resources have you found helpful as you're looking to scale your business, or as you're thinking about remote teams?
So for Deel, this is what I would say, right, is in December 2020, I packed my bags and moved to Singapore to start Deel for Asia Pacific. So far, Deel is a very lonely time zone, like in terms of my whole company, everyone who is in like a very different time zone. I call this APAC GMT +8 as a lonely time zone here right now with Deel. For me, one of the tools which really helped me in staying connected with the team is actually Notion. I know, like, I haven't seen many people from Southeast Asia using that tool, but I love what the early members of the team at Deel did, is that they wrote down a lot of their own thoughts on the Wikipedia page, various iterations, various teams define multiple things. That helped me a lot to understand various problems which are being faced by the team members, or what we are doing right, understand my early customers, or understand how we have done those sales. I'm not just getting the best version which is available now. I could see like various versions which have been available and the edits which have been done. So for me, I would say Notion, as if you're working with across the borders, that is one of the tools which I discovered.
Awesome. Notion. Great. As in just Notion. Great. We'll all look it up.
Yeah, I love Notion. It's really also a practical one. I think for me, obviously you have the whole communication stack, right? Like it could be, Slack, right? You have the Google Suite, obviously like a Zoom, right? But one thing that we've done quite often, actually, not necessarily a technical tool, but just a organizational tool, is that, in our staff meetings every week, half of our staff meetings is basically like a virtual game, right? Basically, it could be like a scribble or whatnot, just because I think especially during this time, again, you don't know where your employees are. Some of our employees, they live by themselves, right? So you also have to have this sense of community, and kind of make sure that work is not just dialing in and dialing out, and that's the end, right? So you want to be sure that you've done and look at kind of how people react in a more informal way. So that's maybe a tool that we use kind of all the time. And also another practical tool. So I learned that when I was in Techstars, actually, so I have my Techstar shirt. Is that we have obviously personality test tools, right? So we always have to think about that, because you don't know, especially you haven't met a lot of people in person, right? Like how do they really, what do they value, right? Like what are the things that that make them tick or make not them tick. So these are things I think you always have to do as a leader, is to understand each other as an individual. And there's many different I guess personality tests or whatnot, some even very fun, that you want to have your team kind of take in order for you to understand each other and build the team and that culture that we keep on talking about. So
Absolutely. Remote teams or distributed teams, I think, is all about how do we get the efficiency, but how do we also have the connectedness going? I can speak from experience that, like Bain, with our teams, we definitely do a lot of fun stuff. Also, like visual Pictionary or like web-based Pictionary is like a particular favorite of
yep.
my team. Okay, looking at questions here, there's one more, and Earl, you might be better positioned to take this one. Do you see a trend in the type of talent that is in demand from the Philippines in particular? I suspect this is related to what you were saying initially about the opportunity in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and again, talent is distributed. It's just how people end up kind of specializing or ecosystem specializing because of demand, right? And to be honest, market dynamics, right? So, um, what I've seen, at least in the Philippines, is that there's a lot of demand for mobile developers. I think just because historically, right, I think people were, building, let's say, Android and iOS applications. There's definitely huge demand with, user experience. I think Canvas main center. So if you looked at a lot of like the Canva icons, there's a lot of Filipinism there, which is kind of cool because they build a lot of the product there. And obviously, I've got so many calls from my friend in Silicon Valley of how to build kind of customer service operations in the Philippines, right? And if you look at most of the unicorns in Silicon Valley, they have most of their customer service operations in Manila. So that's something to think about from that side. But there's definitely huge demand, and that's something actually hard for me, right? Because the demand for this local talent is now global, which is good for the Philippines. And how do we, let's say, as a company operating both in the Philippines and Silicon Valley, kind of compete with the Ubers of the world trying to recruit the same talent pool as you, right? So.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks. Okay, I've got eye on the clock here. Probably a good point for us to pull up. Would love to maybe Abhinav and Earl give both of you a couple of minutes for just sharing any closing thoughts. And if there are any other specific urgent questions that come in, we can find a way to address that after.
Perfect. So from my side, right, is when we're talking about scaling up our startup, or when you're talking about distributed team, we are literally talking about future of work. And I have talked to many people from small companies or large companies alike. We do believe that the talent is everywhere. We are talking more about diversity. We are talking about bringing different ideas. We are talking about different issues and pain points being faced by people in different part of the world, but they are all restricted by the boundaries, and these boundaries needs to be broken. For me, I don't know where we are in future of work and how long it's going to last. Is it going to be the 10 years or 15 years? I think pandemic taught us a lot of things very fast, which I think would have not happened without COVID. And yeah, we are reaching there. And I just believe that the boundaries needs to be broken and the future of work needs to be accelerated faster, bringing in more ideas and diversity into the business.
Thank you.
Great. And I think for me, I know we went kind of very detailed, very quickly on kind of the practical things of scaling a startup, but at least we all have to think of the opportunity of scaling a startup, right? Like again, Southeast Asia, the integration of Southeast Asia, the opportunity if we actually stitch the different talent pools, the markets of Southeast Asia is actually the 10, 100, even $1 trillion opportunity for our generation, right? I think that's I think the macro, right? And then I think the second one is, why you scale a startup, right? And you scale a startup because you want to then, access both talent, but also markets, customers, partners in different areas of the world that you want to scale to, right? So I don't think anyone kind of goes there and say, you know what, I just want to like scale a startup and try to be at least as conservative as possible, right? Like I think you want to think of scaling the startup because you want to be, you want to achieve something big, right? And go beyond your market. That's why you're scaling a startup, right? And that's some lessons we learned from some of these large, companies that are now unicorns, right? Because they had that aggressiveness, they had the thought process of like, how do they branch out from my home market and go to other markets, quickly, and thus, increase my addressable market, making sure I have more customers, making sure I service them, because the world needs your technology, right? And that's why you scale your startup to, more markets than one. So I think that's the practical, and I think more, hopefully, a note, right? That don't let a lot of these kind of headaches, right, prevent you from acting, because the opportunity is there. And to be honest, that's our generation's responsibility, is to hopefully make more improvements in people's lives, regardless of where they are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Abhinav and Earl, for that was a lot of topics that we touched through, right from broad opportunity in Southeast Asia to how do you deal with remote teams and keep teams motivated, as well as tactical issues of how do you think about entity structure and how you set it up. Thanks again for taking the time. I hope this was helpful to the other folks and attendees who were able to plug in.
Okay, thank you guys. It was a very insightful and helpful discussion, and I'm sure that everyone here has learned a lot. So everyone, I've finally figured out that one poll, so I'm launching it now. So the question is on your screens. Have you worked with or planning to work with remote teams in the future? Now, while you're answering that, I'd just like to share with you something, because you've heard talk earlier about Deel. So if you want to know more about what they're doing, you can visit their website at letsdeal.com, or you can scan the QR code that's on your screen. Speaking of Deel as well, this webinar happened in partnership with Deel, and we're happy to announce that they have a special promo for members of the E27 community. There you go. So you get 3 months free, then 30% off for contractors, or 20% off full-time employees if you sign up via E27. You can do that by scanning the QR code on your screen as well. We'll also be sending you guys the links to these after the webinar. Right, now, this is just the first of a series of webinars that we'll be holding with Deel. You can find more about the upcoming ones. We'll keep you updated on that. We'll keep you posted on our social media accounts. You could also visit e27.co/events, or you could create an account on E27 if you haven't yet, to receive the daily digest and weekly event updates, so that you get updated not only on the webinars that we're having with Deel, but also upcoming events and programs that's currently going on in the ecosystem. So again, thanks to everyone, to our panelists and moderators, and thank you everyone for joining us. See you again online.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.